Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Welcome to yet another TBR takedown. I think we have finally hit less than 100 books on the physical TBR, which is crazy. I am so excited that we are getting through this physical TBR. By now, you know the drill. We are using my little punch card to read through my physical TBR, so I'm gonna go ahead and pick a number. I think I'm gonna go with number 3. Okay, so number 3 is a random number. That's exciting. I have not counted how many books are on my physical TBR, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do a random number generator 1 through 90. Okay, 49. Okay, let's actually start from this side because I feel like this side has more of like my priority TBR on it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 16, 17, 18, 19, 31, 32, 33, 34, 37, 48, 49. Okay, this is book number 7 in the Anne of Green Gables series. So I'm not gonna read number 7, but I will read book number 3, which is the next book in the series that I have to read. This is Anne of the Island, and if you don't know anything about Anne of Green Gables, they actually made this into a TV show. I think it's called Anne with an E, and these are all classics, and you follow our main character named Anne, and I believe that they are actually technically for children, but I've been having such a fun time reading through all of these. I'm trying to get used to reading more classics and just like the language in classics books. So if you're someone like me and you are also trying to get used to reading classics or just kind of like dip your toe in the classics water, I highly recommend these books. Like I said, this is book number 3, and so far we've basically just been following Anne throughout her life, and in the last book we saw her after she had graduated high school, and that was a lot of fun. I'm excited to see her as she matures and kind of see where her life goes from here. And basically in the first book, Anne starts out as this orphan. She's basically meeting her new family for the first time. So seeing her get adopted and grow accustomed to her new life and no longer being in an orphanage, and she just finds everything so exciting, and she just has such a young natured spirit. So it is a very fun read and I recommend them. I think the second book has so far been my favorite, so we are on an upward trend with these books. That one was a 4-star for me, so I have high hopes for this one and I'm excited to see where it takes us. And also I think that this one is on my 2026 TBR, so that is exciting. It is the next day. I just hopped out of the shower, that's why my hair is wet, but I did a good amount of reading yesterday because I'm actually really enjoying this book right now. I made it to page 77, so I'm like a quarter of the way through the book, and I obviously don't really want to talk about what is going on in this book because it is book number 3 in a series, but I just find it so interesting how throughout this entire series I've just been loving them more and more, and I feel like a part of that is because these books are so character focused, and I've already spent 2 books with the characters, so I've grown attached to them. I care about everything that they're doing and what they're going through, even though there's not like a ton that's actually happening because like I said, it's very character focused, and I genuinely can't pinpoint what exactly I like about these books so much, but I am really enjoying them, which is genuinely surprising because I'm not someone that normally loves classics, but like I said, they are, I think, technically for children, which makes them so much easier to read, and it genuinely makes me want to try out more classics because of how much I'm enjoying this. All these characters feel so unique, they feel fleshed out, and they all feel so real to me to where it feels like a movie in my head. And I read a good bit of this book yesterday and I was getting that feeling that was like almost groggy. I don't know if anyone else gets this feeling after reading for a long time, but sometimes I will quite literally feel like groggy because it'll feel like I've just sat for a long time and watched a movie because it'll be playing out in my head and it almost feels like I need a second to come back to the real world. So I am so far really liking this book. I don't know if it'll be a 5-star, but we might be in 5-star territory. I don't know. There's still so much left of the book, so we will see where it goes from here, but this is exciting. It's been a couple of days. I'm on page 198, so I'm very close to finishing this book, and I really just have one quick thought to say because none of my thoughts have changed thus far. I am still really enjoying it. I do feel like it's taking me a little bit longer to read, but I feel like that's normal for me when it comes to classics. I think just because the language is obviously very different since these were written so long ago that I just like take a longer time to read them. But anyway, that is besides the point. I wanted to say I find this one so interesting because the rest of the books were kind of like a year in Anne's life, maybe a year or 2. This book so far seems like it's covering maybe about 4 years because in this one she is in college the entire time, but she is now about to finish college, so we've seen her start college all the way way to her almost finishing it, and I'm assuming it's a 4-year degree. Also, another thing that I was not expecting in this one is a little bit of a romance subplot. I feel like a lot of this book has discussed marriage, which kind of makes sense because even when this book takes place, I'm not entirely sure when it takes place, but they mention like it's kind of unique for them to be going to school. And there's this one character in the book and she was like, back in my day, like a woman would never have learned math. Like that was like not a thing. Or I think specifically they were talking about taking mathematics courses while in college. And the character was like, that would not have happened in my day. So I just find that really interesting. And I'm just excited for Anne. I will probably sit and finish this entire book pretty soon, maybe in a couple sittings. So we shall see. But so far I am really enjoying this one. So nothing's changed. I've been liking it the entire time, which is so fun. I love when I love a book when I'm filming. I've probably said that a million times, but it's true. We are back in front of my books to choose our next read, which means I did in fact finish Anne of the Island. But first, let me address the elephant in the room. I did get a haircut, a hair chop. Cut seems too small of a change. This is like a big, massive change for me. I don't know if I've ever had my hair this short. So I keep looking at myself and I'm like, who is this in the mirror? I don't know. So I don't know how I feel about it yet. So anyway, there's that. Let's get back to the book. I finished Anne of the Island and I'm gonna give this a 4-star. I really enjoyed this one. It's very much a peaceful read, and even though they talk about like snow and things like that in this book, I'm kind of glad that I read it in the spring. There's something about this entire series that just gives me spring vibes, and also I am really glad that I picked this book up now because there were some parts of this story where I was like, who are these characters? Like I'm supposed to know them from other books, but I kind of forgot who they are. So I'm definitely glad I read this when I did, and I definitely need to prioritize reading the rest of the series before I forget what happens in this book. But I loved the way that this book ended, so I feel like I probably will not forget what happens in this one. But it was so good, so sweet, a lot more romance in this one compared to the rest of the book, so I'm excited to see where this story goes. But now we will pick our next read. Of course, taking out our little punch card. Let's see, I'm kind of in between numbers 14 and 10. I think I want to go with 14 and then maybe we'll do 10 next time. Yeah, that feels right. Let's start with 14 and then maybe if 10 is still calling my name, we'll do 10 for our last pick. But 14 is a free pick. Wait a second. Oh yeah, this is perfect. I already know what I'm gonna read, and I feel like if you watch my March TBR video, you also already know what I want to read. But this little stack here is my entire March TBR, so I'm definitely picking a book from this stack. And I already know which book I'm gonna pick. I don't know why I'm acting like I don't know. When I know, I have been wanting to read this for so long. Plus, it's my book club's book of the month. Like I have an in-person book club with a bunch of my friends, which means I need to read this book ASAP, or I will not be going to book club in March, and that is Alchemized. I am so excited for this book. Ever since I found out that this book is like, I guess kind of like a retelling of Manacled, or it basically is Manacled, I have been wanting to read this. So I am super excited. It is quite chunky. I feel like you can't even tell on camera, but it's over 1,000 pages. And apparently the pages are pretty thin, which I believe because this is such a heavy book. Like this is crazy. But this is also perfect timing because I am first in line for the hold at the library so that I can also read it on my Kindle. Because you guys know I love reading on my Kindle when I'm on my walks, specifically when I'm walking on the treadmill. Now that it's nicer outside, I've been reading less on my Kindle because I've been going on walks outside rather than on the treadmill. But anyways, might also use a little Audible credit for this. We'll see, but this is our next read and I am so excited. I feel like excited is an understatement. I'm gonna start this literally right now. Made it to page 153 at chapter 11, and this book, it's crazy that we're still setting things up, but it kind of makes sense because it is a fantasy. But I feel like you're finally at the point where we're kind of done setting things up, and I haven't been bored with the setup. I just feel like it was a lot of kind of information dumps, which the way that this is written, all the information dumps are kind of spread throughout different chapters, and so you don't just get like pages and pages of information dumping. So I do really appreciate that. But it's crazy how much world building is in this, and I did expect some world building. I just was not expecting this much world building, which I don't know why I wasn't expecting more, because it's literally like a 1,050 page book and it's a fantasy book. I think maybe it's just been a while since I read fantasy and I was not expecting it to be like that. I don't know, but I am really enjoying it. I think a lot of the reason that I want to sit and read this book is because I'm just super excited about it. I'm excited to see how I feel about it. I'm excited to see where the story goes, because I have no predictions at this point, but like I said, I feel like the plot is now kind of starting to ramp up. We're learning about our characters and everything that they have gone through, specifically the main character, because in the very beginning when you first get introduced to all of this, you don't really know what's going on at all, because our main character pretty much much is having like memory lapses, and so now we're kind of trying to figure out what is going on with her and her memory. And then I feel like the plot is gonna go crazy as well, because I feel like I had something kind of mini spoiled for me, so I won't say it. But I'm also really loving when we get her little memory flashbacks, because she's had a few. She hasn't had a ton, but I do feel like they're gonna start ramping up and we're gonna get more of them, simply because I feel like that's gonna be our way of kind of learning about our character, because like I said, she also is kind of trying to figure these things out for herself as well. But I'm really enjoying it so far. It does kind of feel a little bit like academic in some sets, which is weird because they're not in school, like there's nothing really academic about this, but I don't know, there's just something about it that is reminding me of Calabasas, which is making me feel like it is a little bit academic, which is weird because it's not. So I don't know, but I am really enjoying it, and if it was up to me, I would just sit and read until I finish this book. But I'm gonna read as much as possible today. Oh geez, remember this room? This is the room where my channel started. So it's so fun to be filming here again. But anyways, I'm visiting my dad, that's why I'm here today. But I have a little update for you all. I am on chapter 60, which is page 752. And I actually don't remember the last time I updated. I think it's been a very long time. But I have essentially been reading this book anytime I get the second, because like I've probably said already, this book is like a million trillion pages long. So anytime I get a spare second, I have been reading this book. I've been literally falling asleep with this book in my hand pretty much every single night. And I also got the audiobook for this, but I will say with the audio, I have only been listening to it if I am driving or if I am just walking on the treadmill. Like, it is not a kind of audiobook, at least in my opinion, that you can just like throw on and like do other things while doing, you know what I mean? Like, it's something where I just have to at least like sit and listen. I have also been doing a little bit of immersive reading with the audiobook, which I do really enjoy that, especially because I feel like the narrator for this book does a really good job. But anyways, that was kind of just a side note, not really what I came on here to talk about. If you're new to my channel, I wanted to say I am not someone that reads a ton of fantasy books. I probably read maybe one fantasy book a month, and I feel like that number actually went up recently because a lot of the book club picks that me and my friends pick are fantasy books. I don't really know how that happened, but I think so far we've only read fantasy books. We've only had book club for like maybe 5-6 months now. I can't exactly remember, but anyways, a lot of the books that we pick are fantasy books, and that's pretty much the only time I'll read a fantasy book, unless it's a book that I just like really want to read. Anyway, all of that was to say that I don't read fantasy all of that often, and I feel like that's important to note because in my opinion there is so much going on in this book in like the politics side of things and setting up the whole story, and I am very far into the book and I feel like I am still somewhat confused at different parts of the world, in the sense of like something will happen or like our narrator will say something and I'm just kind of like, okay, what's the importance of this? But I feel like the author knows that the politics in this world can be a little bit, not confusing, but a little bit, I guess, complex maybe, because then I feel like a couple sentences later the narrator will almost like explain to us like the significance of what's going on, which I really appreciate. And I also can already see myself in the future potentially rereading this book as I read more and more fantasies, and I think it took me so long to get into the book because of that, because I'm not super well vested into this whole fantasy world. Like, this book is probably one of the first fantasy books that I've read where I'm like, okay, now I finally understand where people are like, oh, you can't just like jump into fantasy for the first time. I mean, like, you can, but there are way more complex fantasies out there than others, and in my opinion this one is a little complex. But also, I don't know what's going on with me, but recently, particularly when I'm reading this book, my brain just will not turn off. Like, I will find myself reading this book and then I'll be reading for like a page or two and I'll be like, wait, I haven't actually been reading. I've been thinking about the million other things going on in my life and the other things that I need to do. So I've essentially been having a really hard time focusing on this book, on just anything this past week, and I don't really know what's going on. But now that I am so much further into the book, I feel like that's been happening less and less. Maybe it's the book, maybe I have just mentally kind of calmed down a little bit. I don't know. but I am enjoying this book so much better now. I feel like the first part of the story, because I did make it to part 2, I think I showed you guys that, and I'm assuming that there's going to be another part, at least the way that I think that the book is going to be structured. I'm assuming that there's one more part after this part. But anyways, the first part was very, very world building-esque. It was very slow in my opinion. But then the second part was like the opposite. We've got a lot more action going on in this second part, and I am so intrigued to see how the story is going to wrap up. I feel like a lot is going to have to happen in these last, what, like 300-ish pages. And I also feel like this is the part where everyone is like, it's emotional turmoil towards the end. So I'm gonna go sit and read for a little bit. I would love to finish this book in a couple of days, but who knows, because I still have a lot going for me. It might have taken me 750 pages, but I get the hype now. I would say around that mark, like the 750 page mark, is when I started really getting into the book and like really being obsessed with it. Like now I would say I'm at the part where I'm like, I don't want to stop until I finish this book, because I think I have only like 100-ish pages left. And now I'm finally understanding why people say that this book is emotionally devastating. Like the last 100 pages that I've already read, I have been emotionally distraught over pretty much everything that's going on. And so I just imagine that it's going to get worse from here. I just feel like the very last of the book that I'm about to sit down and read are just going to be very hard. And I have absolutely zero predictions. I have no idea how this book is going to end, but I am so intrigued and I'm so excited to finish it. I definitely don't think that this book is going to be a 5-star at this point, because as much as I'm obsessed with how this book is ending, at least like so far, I don't want to jump the gun here, but I found the beginning of this book to be just not my favorite. I think if I was super into fantasy, and I think if fantasy was a genre that I read a lot, I would just obsess over this book. So if you are in that bucket, I would recommend this to you. But also, I appreciate the author so much for making this one book, because I feel like they could have separated this book at least into 2 different books, but I would not have liked that. Like I like that this is just one long book. I like that I'm not committing myself to a very long fantasy series. I like that I can just sit and read this entire book and get the entire story. Also, I feel like this book would make such a good movie. Like someone needs to pick up this book, make it into a movie, and cast me as Helena. I promise I would do such a good job. Like that used to be my dream. I used to just really want to go into acting. So put me in there. I promise I'll do my best, okay? Anyways, I'm gonna sit and finish this. I have very high hopes for the last 100 or so pages, and hopefully it doesn't absolutely emotionally damage me. Finished Alchemized like less than 5 minutes ago, so these thoughts are very fresh, and I will of course let you know if I change my mind at all, but I think I'm gonna give this a 4-star. I keep toggling between a 3.5 and a 4-star, so I think as of right now it's a 4-star, simply because I love how this book ended. I think I was saying this in the last clip, so I don't want to keep repeating myself, but the last 300-ish, maybe 400 pages, I was fully obsessed with. I loved the ending of this book so much. The only reason that this isn't rated higher is because I did not love the beginning part of the book as much. I just felt like it was a little bit slower, but I am giving the book a little bit of grace for that, because I do feel like in a fantasy book, the beginning has to be slower. Like you are setting up this entire fictional world and you're getting a bunch of history and backstory and things like that. So I do feel like it's purposefully slower at the beginning. It's just such a long book that I felt like I was like dragging my feet in the beginning of the book. I wasn't super excited to pick it up all the time, but when I was reading the last like 300 or so pages, that's all I wanted to do. All I wanted to do was pick up this book and read. So that definitely bumped the book up in rating for me, and I'm so glad I read this book, and I can't wait to sit and discuss this book with a bunch of my friends when we do our in-person book club. So it's now time to pick out our next and final book for this video. Of course, using my little trusty punch card. I think I already know which one I want to do. It is currently St. Patrick's Day, so I want to pick a green book, so I think I'm going to do number 17, which is a TBR jar prompt, which I need to go get. It's over there. Hold on. I love doing a little prompt jar, and hopefully I can prioritize some more of my monthly TBR, because Alchemized is currently the only book that I've read from my physical TBR. So, I mean from my monthly TBR. Anyways, our prompt is a book with a purple cover. Wait a second. Oh, is this cheating? Like the only little bits of purple in this are like the little dots, but the entire back of the book is purple. That's why I thought that this book was purple. I thought that there was more on the cover, but it's literally just the little polka dots. Okay, let's see what else I have. Technically, Holden Pattern also has purple. Like, I can't even tell if they're both wearing purple or if just this character is purple. Let's see what else we have. Okay, down here, like literally at the bottom of the stack, I have How to Make Friends with the Dark, which has a lot of purple on it. But like I said, it's at the very bottom of the stack, so I only want to pull it out if I'm actually going to read that one. Swept Away also has some purple on it. You know what has purple on it? Is this pink? I don't know, I feel like yeah, it's pink to purple. It's like a little bit of an ombre. Why can't I decide? I think I'm getting decision fatigue over here. I feel like I should pick this one because it's the most purpley. I just don't think I'm in the mood for this. I could be in the mood for this, for sure. A romance right after that dark fantasy, I feel like that might be nice. Oh, I'm dropping all of the little goodies that came with this book. Oh, let's see. Yeah, I don't think I'm in the mood for this. I'm gonna put it back. Maybe I'll be in the mood later. I feel like I have to choose this one because the rest of these feel like cheating. Like there's barely any purple on these, even though I really wanted to read more from my monthly TBR, but that's okay. I think I'm gonna go ahead and read Lucky Penny. I've also just been so excited to read this book. This is actually technically the second book in an interconnected standalone series. Is that what they're called? I think so. Like you don't have to read every single book, but this one is a second chance romance, and I believe our MMC just came out of prison. I'm actually really excited about, but it does take place at the beach, so probably would have been fun to read in the summer, but I will let you know if I think that it's a good summer read or not. Oh, and they're roommates? Okay, that is crazy. Okay, so there's definitely going to be some forced proximity in this book. I'm actually really excited to read this. This will be our next book. It took me actually forever to fall asleep last night, which means I am exhausted this morning, but it also means I got pretty far into this book last night. I made it to page 206, which is chapter 32. So I don't have that much left of it, which at this point, I actually feel like I liked the book a little bit better at the beginning than I'm liking it right now. I think at this point in my life, I prefer a closed door romance, and I would not call this a closed door romance, or maybe it's just like the spice in this book. I also want to note this is not a closed door romance, but Unravel Me was a closed door romance by the same author if you are interested in that. They also are both on Kindle Unlimited, which is nice because I've been switching between the Kindle and the physical copy, which I love to do. But anyway, I like that when I'm reading this book, it feels like I'm reading a rom-com, specifically because of how much I can visualize in my head. Like it feels like I am watching an early 2000s rom-com in my head when I'm reading this book, and I feel like that is just so fun to me. And it's also exactly what I needed after the heaviness that was Alchemized. Like I just needed a book that was a bit more relaxing, and that's what I'm getting from this one. I will say I am not in love with the writing style in this book, but this is like a common thing that happens, particularly second chance romance books do this a lot, where they will be alluding to something throughout the entire book, and normally it's like why they broke up. And so this book is doing that, and I just don't like when books do that. And it's not even just in second chance romance where I see that happening. It's just kind of like one of my pet peeves, because what happens, at least for my brain, is when that something finally gets revealed, I am expecting it to be like the top of the top, the most dramatic, like I am expecting it to be super big. So my expectations going into that reveal are just super high, and I feel like that oftentimes leads me to be a little bit disappointed. So that's the main issue I'm having right now. Other than that, I'm having a great time reading this book, and I will hopefully finish it today. I think right now, since I have a little bit of free time this morning, I'm going to make my cup of coffee and just sit and relax while I read this book. I just finished Lucky Penny and I think I'm gonna give this book a 3-star. I was not super in love with it. I feel like I really liked the beginning half of the book and then I just could not connect to the last half of the book. I don't know what it was, but there was something about the romance in this book. I felt like as I read, the less connected I got to the couple, which is really weird because like I said, I really liked the beginning half of the book and I was really connected to the couple in the beginning half. So I'm very confused on where things kind of disconnected for me there, but that's okay. You win some, you lose some, and I still love Catherine Binter and I'm going to keep reading her books and I'm excited to read more books from her. I know she already has 2 other books out that I have not yet read, and then there's one more book coming out in the Hometown series, which she hasn't announced the date that that's coming out yet, but it's going to follow Penny's sister, which you meet her in this book, so I'm very excited for that. But yeah, a little sad that I didn't love this one as much as I loved Unravel Me, but Unravel Me was literally a 5-star read for me, so I'm not too upset about that. But we read some great books in this video and we checked off a couple more books from my physical TBR. I am determined to read my entire physical TBR this year. It's gonna happen and we're gonna do it together through these TBR takedown reading vlogs. So let me know what other videos you want to see. If you have any other ideas on how I can read through my physical TBR, don't forget to comment, like, and hit that subscribe button below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!